welcome. Episode 4. We have a special episode today. We got Lou back with us here. And
What's up, buddy?
we also have his partner in crime, Court. This is my first time getting to meet Court. Heard a lot about him. So I'd like to just give him a few minutes, kind of give a brief background of yourself and how you and Lou met, and kind of bring us up to speed to today.
Okay. I think one common thread throughout my whole life has been basically collecting. What I've collected has changed several times over the years, but with cards, I started when I was young. I think a lot of us have a similar story in that I grew up sort of in the junk wax era, mid 80s through the early 90s, and got away from it a bit, came back to it for a little while in college. I was sort of like a Greg Maddux super collector for a couple of years, and then got away from it again, and returned to cards, I guess, in 2017. Started by collecting Mike Trout, and Lou and I actually met because I bought a card from him. And the first time we met was kind of comical because, it turns out that he lives within a half an hour of me, and he wanted a wire transfer, and there were some maybe a little bit of basic trust issues. And so we were sort of researching each other online, I think. And then we met up at a local sports bar to do the deal. And Lou had brought like a 1-page contract to sign off showing
Just
that
to
I had
make sure that he
received
had
the
it.
card. And so we sort of joke about that now, 5 years later.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
That's how we met the first time.
Great. That's a fun story. Definitely interesting right there. And so since you guys have met, I assume you guys, kicked it off, found some alignment. How has it been now, kind of having somebody to collect with, if you will, to bounce ideas off of, and or just kind of hit each other up and say, hey, I'm looking at this. What do you think? Are you interested in kind of coming along with me? How did that progress from that 1-page contract?
For the first, maybe first 2 or 3 years, we were sort of, collecting parallel. We weren't collecting the same things. Lou was in high-end MJ and basketball. I was in baseball, and then I sort of branched out to tennis and soccer. So we were communicating about cards quite frequently, but we weren't in the same spaces, really. And I guess that changed not that long ago.
So we overlapped once, I think, when we were both collecting Brady for a little bit. Just at different levels, in terms of I don't know, I kind of went all in of just bought all kinds of stuff, low end, mid end, just a little bit of everything, and Court had a little bit more of higher end stuff. He was the first guy that I saw had a Brady champ ticket. And it was cool because it was actually a Beckett 9. So there's only 7 of those, and that's the highest graded one. So, that was kind of neat. And, at the time, I probably had 3 things. I was Brady, and then I was also in hockey a little bit with Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. So like Court was saying, we communicated a lot because we got along. We liked talking cards and collecting and drinking beer. And then, but we didn't, we kind of stayed in our own lanes for a while. And then more recently, though, I think it was beginning of the football season, he invited me down to watch the games. I think it was week 1. I mean, I came down a couple times, and, I was like, hey, I'm like, what do you think of this idea? I'm like, cards are starting to get a little more expensive. And, in order to get the kind of stuff that we both like, I was like, it'd be putting most of your bankroll, if not all of it, into one card, and that becomes, just a little too, I don't know, it's a little heavy. It's a, and it's a little, the risk is probably a little bit higher, I think. So I was like, what do you think of the idea of, if we team up a bit? And, we both had liquidity coming at the same time, within a couple of months of one another. I had sold the big 97 game jersey Jordan. and Court had sold Pele, PSA 9 Pele, and big Juan Soto 1-of-1 superfractor. So we had plenty of cash, at the time. So it was kind of my idea to combine it, and then he took it. I'll let him tell the rest of the story, but he kind of took it from there with a couple of the ideas. And we just sort of, once we came to a consensus, we kind of pushed all the chips in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were just spitballing who we might like to, go after next. And I was really, really big on Curry at the time. I thought he was relatively undervalued, especially when you looked at like Luka and even LeBron. Started to dawn on me that maybe the gap there was a little bit too big. And, he was not that far away from breaking the 3-point record, and the Warriors look really good this year, and they could contend for another title. And I'm like, man, this is our window, and we've always sort of had the mindset that, you don't have to be, first to the party with anything, but if you have, a good window of opportunity, even if it's like maybe a couple weeks where you're a little bit ahead of the curve, then that's enough to make some moves. So we started looking to see what we could find.
Yeah. And so with that being said, what are some benefits that each one of you have seen in now kind of teaming up together, that maybe a couple things that are easier that weren't as easy or weren't as accessible when you were doing it, on your own?
The obvious thing is, twice the ability to source both on the buy side and the sell side. There have definitely been situations where, maybe I located the card and Luke located the buyer for the card and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's been pretty copacetic so far.
Yeah. We just, we've had a couple of, more significant transactions recently, where that exact situation happened, where, Court sourced the card, we bought it together. And then one of my contacts, was able to put together a deal, where they were the buyer of the card, and then I would just bring that idea to Court. And if we would, if we agreed on the price or what have you, then next thing you know, it's sold, and, we move along into, into the next idea. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like two is better than one, and Court's very well connected in spaces that I don't play as much in, and I think that probably holds true on, on both sides. So, as long as, now that we've come along the way, like you said, since the the 1-page contract, so the trust issues aren't there, so when he brings an idea, I'm like, okay, like, as long as I have cash, or like, can put myself into a situation, to buy it alongside of him, like, we're not really asking that many questions anymore, other than, we'll go through the math together of like, okay, how do you think this fits, relative to, other prices and other things that are going on in the space.
I
Yeah.
think the most important thing is that we just generally see eye to eye conceptually in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and our general approach to it all. I think that's probably the most important piece. Like the specifics of which player, which card, that's a little bit more fluid. There's no one right answer. There's multiple ways to do this.
Yeah. So touching on that and kind of going back to Curry a little bit, you guys recently were able to come together on a pretty newsworthy, buy. So could we talk about that a little bit? How that came about, kind of the thought that goes into something like that? I mean, that's a hefty investment, right? And I'm sure from your 2 point of views, there's a lot of things that could be invested in. And so what are some of the things that you think about and like talk through to decide, let's sink a nice hefty investment into this? So that, and then kind of what that collection was.
Well, I think the general framework was we were looking for Curry, and we're looking for the very best that we can find. We're not looking to corner the market on base cards or, low end refractors or lower grades or whatever. It's like, what's the single best card we can find and how do we make that work for us? So it's sort of casting a wide net, and we have some people looking for us. We work with PWCC quite a bit. They sometimes source cards for us, and we were just sending feelers out, looking to see what was out there.
Yeah, I mean, this one sort of the timing was wild. I mean, it just kind of fell into our lap, because we'd already picked up a couple of other cards. I think we already had 2 of the gold refractors to 50, and then Court already had an RPA, a really nice True Gem Plus Curry to 99. So we were kind of like underway for sure. And then, like you said, we'd put out some feelers, and then spoke to PWCC and said, like, look, we're looking to take a position in Curry. And then by luck, as luck would have it, I mean, Brock Hayden, was the guy that put it all together for us. It just coincidentally happened that, there was a gentleman who had built the entire set and was looking to move it as a set. Like he was adamant that it wasn't going to be broken up. And we felt, once we understood exactly what was in it, because it wasn't just the base set, and it was, that included, just the traditional RPA to 99 for each of the players. It also had the variations. So, we had the gold to 25, and then the unbelievably elusive platinum to 5. So from our perspective, we thought it was really just unique at that point, because we were like, not sure if we wanted every single card per se, that was in the set, but the ability to buy it that way, I think financially helped us. But I don't know if you had any different thoughts on that, or.
I mean, obviously there are other players in that set that are desirable. I mean, DeMar DeRozan's having a heck of a year, MVP candidate.
James Harden's had a hell of a career. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Blake Griffin, Drew Holiday. But I mean, we're not buying the set for those guys. That's sort of just like the cherry on the sundae. And it really just comes down to, can we make the numbers work? So how, the toughest part is, how do you value the platinum Curry? I mean, go find a comp. Good luck.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just trusting your ability to use the information that's out there and sort of glean what you feel comfortable paying. And the funny thing is, I don't think either one of us was necessarily all that comfortable with the price that we paid. Like, it was definitely more further than we wanted to go. But that's one of those situations where if you pass on it, you're not going to get another go at it. And then, it doesn't take long, and suddenly we're like, wow, we feel really good about this,
Yeah, it's funny because what he just said, I always remind me of that when we did the Hobby Dons documentary together with Aaron Rich. Court, in my opinion, had the best line in the show, when he was like, if you pass on this now, what's it going to be worth in a year from now? Like, you're going to be paying 25% more, or you're not going to be able to get it. So, as we were going back and forth discussing this, and kind of like being like, good Lord, this is a lot of money, and it's going to require a little bit of, financial
yes. Leverage.
Yeah, it's going to require a little bit of leverage, to get it all done. But I kind of reminded him of that. I was like, look, there's going to be certain pieces where if we pass, it's not coming back. So do we have a better alternative than what we're looking at right now? And if we wanted to be in the Curry space, which we decided we did, then that was it was a must-have move. So we did it. And then we've been kind of just trying to move some other pieces around, our own portfolio and chessboard, to kind of just make sure that everything is fine now, to get everything paid for and squared away, and kind of make sure that your portfolio stays the way that you want it to.
Yeah. When you guys go into a collection like that, do you go in like with the mindset that you guys are going to buy it and keep it together as a collection as well? Or did you go in knowing that, look, we're here for Curry, but to the point you guys made, there are still, DeMar, James, Drew, Blake, there's still these other pieces that will, demand for sure, like, value. Is it something where you're okay with, like, kind of getting rid of some pieces here and there and holding on to the main point, which is Curry, or are you guys looking to like keep it together as well?
I think it's interesting because the seller, required that we buy the whole set. That was the only option. And in a sense, that might have actually played into our favor because I think it's harder to find someone that's willing to buy the whole set. That's just a much bigger ask. So on our side, no, I don't think we have any plans of keeping it together. It was always really to get those 3 cards, and then whatever else we might be able to get out of the rest of the set in terms of liquidity will just offset the purchase price. And that's sort of the way we viewed it when we were making offers on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. At least in the near term, I like the idea of owning the whole set. I agree that more than likely it'll have to be pieced out. I anticipate that for demand for certain things, inside of the set will probably require for us to break it up. But what's cool is it is of our opinion or knowledge to this point that it's more than likely the only known complete set, for 09-10, the inaugural year of NT. So that, that would be similar to having, like the 03-04 Exquisite and all the variations that go with it. So outside of the Puerto Rico collection, that got broken up, I guess at the beginning of 2021, I can't imagine that anybody else has put it all together. So, I think that guy, Jim, put together I'm pretty sure he had all of it. He had all the 1-of-1s and things like that. So that was probably the only known set of 03-04 Exquisite. And so there is a uniqueness to it. I'd imagine, there might be a handful of people that would be like, wow, that would be really cool, just to kind of say that they have it. But the way the space is now, I think it's likelier that, people will say, hey, would you sell this piece or that piece or these 2 pieces or those 2 pieces?
Yeah, for sure. But it's definitely like to the point you just made it. It's almost like one of those like Smithsonian Basketball Hall of Fame kind of things with, like Curry ruined basketball for kids. I coach kids, trust me. They all think they're Curry now. It's
Right.
tough. And but in a good way, right? Like back to a real note. He changed basketball. But as did James Harden. Like a lot of James Harden's game has changed a lot of just the way defense is played, a lot of, the foul situations and whatnot. Blake Griffin was jumping over cars back in the dunk contest. It is, and like you said, it's the first, the inaugural set. So there's definitely something to be said about that. And that was mainly why I had that question. I was curious, if you guys took that into account, like looking at it, thinking, let's hold this until all these guys go into the hall. And this is kind of like, one of the kind of NBA collections, especially with some of the other pieces you guys have with like the shoes and jerseys and whatnot. It's almost like a Hall of Fame exhibit in and of itself,
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I've built a bunch of sets before, and so I know that I know what it's like, to own something like that and put the effort in to get it. So or the effort in to build it. So the seller, just amazing. I just can't imagine the discipline to stay after it. Like it's not like you could just put it together in 6 months or a year. By the time that stuff, who knows how long it all took to to rip and then mark down all the cards that you had and things like that. So there was an appeal, at least to me, to own it that way. But I think in the hobby as a whole, there's less set building, than, I don't know, maybe in 20, 30, 40 years ago, that there were. So like I say, over a period of time, my expectation would be that, a potential buyer, of wanting a certain Curry piece or a certain Harden piece, especially these platinum cards that only have 5 copies, I'd imagine that, there'll be a couple of guys that would say like, hey, I really just want that one piece, or something like that. So kind of
Right.
have to wait and see what that looks like. But, I'm not opposed to owning it for a long time. I mean, I think, Curry is phenomenal. Like you said, he changed the game, from the shooting perspective. Harden literally had the rules changed, because of the way he plays. I mean, like Curry kind of plays this fast break, shoot from anywhere. Harden plays like this very sort of slow, methodical plotting game. And now he's on my Sixers, so I'll be rooting extra hard for him now. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that was you brought that up. Quick segue. How who do you think won that trade?
In my opinion, for this year, I think the Sixers win the trade. I think longer term, Brooklyn. Assuming that if KD and Kyrie are as tight as the media portrays it, and that Irving signs an extension after, because I think his contract is up after next year. So basically, the Brooklyn sort of has like this 1 year rental left of Kyrie, and the Sixers have this year and next year for Harden. And then after that, massive decisions need to be made. The Sixers, are in a position where they might be, if they don't win it this year or next year, they're in a bad spot to have to write James Harden a really, really bad contract where they're paying him like $60 million when he's like 38 years old. So, and then from Brooklyn's perspective, if Kyrie doesn't re-sign next year, or they're just like, hey, we're just tired of putting up with him. Now they're down to KD and Simmons. I don't know. I mean, like, they have these other, pieces, like Seth Curry or whatever, but I think Sixers this year, next year, Brooklyn longer term.
Yeah, good take. All right, so switch gears on the cards. You mentioned some soccer and some tennis. And it seems like those soccer's been getting, ticked up, and you see a lot more activity. Tennis, I feel like, is still, no one's like even looking at it really. What is your outlook on those two markets, and like the upside? I'd love to hear the insight behind that.
I think tennis, it's not really a sport-wide, suddenly everyone's going to start following tennis. I mean, I started into tennis cards because I grew up playing and watching tennis. I mean, it's been one of my favorite sports. But I think it only really translates to the current card market in terms of like the GOATs. So, Federer, Nadal, Serena, and Djokovic, maybe. I mean, that's like the list. Maybe Naomi Osaka in there also, but really it's a very, shallow pool of players that are going to command prices. Right. I mean, Serena's prices continue to set records, but I think it's a very poorly kept secret that, her husband is somewhat driving that market. So, and I mean, the ongoing battle for the most Grand Slam titles among Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic at least keeps bringing renewed interest to that.
Yeah, that storyline's cool.
Yeah. On the other hand, with soccer, I think that's a totally different scenario. I think that soccer is basically poised to continue climbing the leaderboard in terms of cards. It's the most popular sport in the world, and it's finally starting to gain a lot more traction in the US. So for a very US centric card collecting community with a lot more coverage from ESPN, a lot more availability for consumers to watch the sport, the World Cup happening later this year, and then us hosting in 2026. I mean, it's just set to explode, really. And the supply is so much smaller than every other sport, so it doesn't really take much to move the needle.
Right.
Even like MLS now is in so many more markets inside of the United States. I mean, we got to have, 20 years ago, there was like 6-8 teams, or whatever. And now there's one in, most of the major cities. And if you're in a city where your team is good, it only adds to that. Like Nashville, we just got a team, 3 years ago? Four.
Yeah.
So,
uh,
and then like this past
2 years
year,
ago.
and we made it all the way to like the semifinals. I mean, like it's a really good team, and they've made some, some really cool moves in terms of,
And we're getting a new stadium next year.
yeah. So there's a lot going on, I think, to create more excitement. And speaking of that, do you want to touch on? I know we didn't win, but
No, we don't need to talk about that.
No. 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 Hell no. 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 I refuse. No. No.
So there was a new record set, right?
Yeah, we took a swing at that one, but that one was there's a lot of unfortunate backstory to that.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
It's going to take too long, but yes, good for the market. Really happy to see that the Pele, the card, for the community, breaking the $1 million marks, super cool. Really badass to see a 7-figure soccer card, and certainly plays into the thesis that we try to subscribe to, that Court was telling about a little earlier, of who are we trying to get the best of the best of, again, and it could be any particular player, in that, but in this case, obviously we actually took 2 swings at it. The first one got voted down. I think we lost narrowly, like 53-46, or something to that effect. And then this one got approved, but we got outbid. I'm sure whenever it goes public, we'll whoever the winner was, I'm fairly confident has some really deep pockets. So it's hopefully it's good trajectory for the space in general. So to the comments on soccer, certainly continuing to explode, and having new opportunities and continued growth. If that doesn't show you, then I don't really know what would. So
Yeah. And I've said this to Lou before, and I mean, call me crazy if you like. I always put that as like the first line of the conversation. But with the ongoing concerns about health issues and CTE and injuries in the NFL, and this increased interest in soccer, I wouldn't be at all surprised if 10 or 20 years down the road, soccer is more popular in the US than the NFL.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, actually. With me and my brother joke about all the time how like 20 years the NFL is going to be 2 in touch or done, because it's just so crazy. I mean, it's fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but it is absurd. So with that Pele card selling the way it did, what do you guys think that does for people with careers like Ronaldo and Messi when they retire?
Well, I think Ronaldo and Messi are sort of in that same conversation, or at least the same group as, LeBron, Curry,
Yeah.
Brady.
they're going to be this generation's GOATs. I think Pele seems to, how I should always have that mythological stance of, all-time greatest ever. But at the same time, like, it's been probably 30, what is he, 80 something? So it's got to be, 40 something years or so since his last game. So most people that are into the space now never saw him. They know what the card is and to go get it, similar to like a Mickey Mantle and Honus Wagner. But I think from just a popularity and what you saw perspective, it's going to be, these new guys, and who have also had tremendous careers. I mean, take nothing away from them. It's just, it's just different. So it was kind of like what we talked about before, Greg, as the space gets younger, I think you're just seeing more people drive and push towards what it is they can see, on a week-to-week basis, or on a month-to-month basis, that kind of thing. So,
and in that sense, I mean, you have people that like to invest in vintage like Pele or Mickey Mantle, players that are retired, their legacy is established, they're blue chip and all of that. And then there's definitely this ongoing evolution of prospecting and buying. Joe Burrow is in his second year, but he's going to the Super Bowl and he's in the GOAT conversation. Like what, like Luka, that sort of thing.
Mahomes.
I really think the sweet spot is players that are towards the end of their career. You can still watch them play. You can still sort of bet on them in terms of their performance, but their legacy is also established as well, right? So LeBron, Brady, Messi, Ronaldo, all these guys who are sort of like, maybe they have 5 years left or less, or, somewhere up there, but they've got their rings, they've got their MVPs, they've got their titles, they've already proven it. And in a lot of ways, a lot of situations, those players are actually a more cost-effective play than, Luka or Trae Young or whoever is blowing it up this week online.
Right.
Right. And I guess I think also what kind of you have to take into account when investing into soccer is, to the point that you made, a lot of the card industry and buyers are in the United States. So if it were to kind of catch on outside of the United States where these guys are located, that would just add all that new money coming in would, by itself raise up, what do they say, the rising tide lifts all boats. So that's interesting to think about as well. And the idea of, you said that the World Cup coming here in 4 years, I don't know if Ronaldo and Messi, their bodies will be able to hold out, but if they are able to, I think that event, to the point that you made earlier, could really, really have a massive impact in the United States on soccer.
I think it'll have a massive impact regardless, because it's such a rare opportunity to see competition on that level, at your home country. And the way things are trending, interest in the United States for soccer is going to be at an all-time high by that point. Will be sort of like a fever pitch, and almost like you're giving a drink to a thirsty person. I mean, if like the soccer market continues to grow over the next 4 years, and that might be the first time that the World Cup comes to the United States, and everybody's foaming at the mouth to go see a match.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying, like, as you guys are talking, I'm sitting here thinking, like, on the Bulls documentary, right? Like, I feel like if Ronaldo, I agree with you that no matter what, it's going to have a massive, massive impact. But if Ronaldo and Messi are able to make it and play, I feel like it will do for soccer in America what the Dream Team did for basketball in Spain, with Jordan showing up. You know what I mean? And Jordan actually being there, and you actually being able to, like, see him play. I think it would have helped no matter what, but having him there, I think just kind of, I think Messi and Ronaldo being there playing take it to like a whole nother stratosphere.
Yeah, you could feel maybe they blow the roof off the top. I'd imagine that even if they're not, they'll be here though. Like I would imagine that almost like some kind of like honorary captains for their teams or whatever, because by then, some of the guys that that Court has been talking about for the past couple of years should really be in their primes, like Mbappe and Haaland and players like that everybody's after right now. So you kind of have like this old guard that is either already retired or like Messi and Ronaldo would both be about 40, 41 probably by then. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're the new Tom Brady's of soccer. So and then they can keep going. Who knows? But I feel like it'll be a star-studded event, and it'll be one of those things where, like, even if they're not playing, they'll be paid to be here, so like they'll be out promoting it and, just making it happen, and everybody be really, really excited. So I think either way, that event when it gets here is going to be pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. It's exciting to think about. It's got me thinking now about soccer cards. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So obviously NFL season's over now, right? We have now until September. I don't know if either one of you are like heavy into football, but do you tend to try to take advantage of like off seasons in the respective sports that you guys collect in? And if so, kind of what do you look at? What do you think about during those time periods?
I think we were just talking about this even right before the Super Bowl that I actually like Joe Burrow quite a bit, but had some bad luck buying some of his cards earlier in the season where I had multiple sellers back out on me on various stuff, and I didn't really land what I was looking to get. And obviously prices this past month have been sort of crazy, but I've always sort of lived by the adage of sell the sizzle, not the steak, meaning like the price spike already happened before the Super Bowl. I think it was sort of baked in. And I was expecting or hoping that Burrow's prices would even, come down a bit, even if he won. Because I think it's just sort of a natural thing to sort of shift your focus to whatever's actively happening. And obviously we're very close to spring training for baseball, and then the NBA playoffs are coming up soon. So it's tough though, because I think the natural tendency for everybody is to pay attention to what's currently happening. So you almost have to like go against the tide to shop for what's not happening, it's a very diligent pursuit, to say the least.
The contrarian.
I'm probably a little different. I'm not as active buying out of season, for, I don't know, looking for the discounts, if you will, on certain things. I tend to subscribe to I look very, very closely at the uber modern market of like the most hyped players, the guys that are getting the most attention, whose prices are running high. And the more growth and, or, as I like to kind of call it, out over their skis that those prices get, push me harder into, legacy cemented players. And when I make that move, I'll stay with that theme for a while. I don't need, I'll just continue to hunt Jordan and Curry or whoever it is that we're looking for at the time, because a lot of people get too caught up into like, hey man, I got to get this, every 2 weeks, I got to make a move here. Oh, Kyler Murray won this week, I got to buy and sell. I don't really do any of that. So I just want the rarest and the best, of whatever players that, that I think fit the theme of if so-and-so is X, then there's massive value on other popular players that just, that nobody's paying attention to. So, but that's a little bit more of a longer term disciplined approach. And a lot of people, tend to flip a little faster, or want to anyway, whereas I don't try to do that. It might happen once in a while because, we land something that somebody else wanted. And then the next thing they come with an offer where you're like, oh, I guess I will take X, percent on my money, in a short period of time. But I think both Court and I have found most of our success in the space, by buying and holding at least for, a year, multiple years, when you can have, certain cards. I think that's where you get the sustained success.
Having trouble managing your valuable collection and finding price transparency in the sports card market? Me too. That's why I use CardHedge. CardHedge is a brilliant price analysis and collection management tool. Track all your grades across PSA, CSG, HGA, SGC, BGS, and as well as your raw cards. CardHedge pulls their research from sites like eBay, StarStock, MySlabs, and Golden Auctions. You want an accurate picture of the sports card market? Yeah, me too. With over tens of thousands of cards in their system, CardHedge is the definitive sports card price guide. Quickly search by card, player, or set. Sort by price or percentage change. It has a lot of awesome advanced features. So what are you waiting for? Join today for only $14.99.
We both believe very strongly in sort of like the cardboard theory of relativity, which is, don't chase what everyone else is chasing in the moment. Look at how their values are relative to other stars that maybe are undervalued as a result, and then focus there. Like, don't compete with everyone else on whatever's trending upward today. Figure out what that indicates in terms of what else might be worth buying.
Yeah.
And that's sort of
Yeah.
how I ended up on Curry in the first place. It's like, everyone's been LeBron for several years. And then you start to look at it and go, okay, well, Curry's had every bit as much of an impact on the sport, if not greater. He stayed at the same team his entire career. He's got his rings. He's got his MVPs. Like, how is he worth only whatever, half of LeBron?
Yeah, or less.
And I mean, LeBron has the accomplishments as well, but in a lot of ways, I think Curry's much more popular. I mean, at least with the youth today, they want to be Curry. They don't want to be LeBron.
Right.
Because every kid, no matter how big or small they are, they think they can shoot from downtown, and Curry's just a very likable person. It's hard not to enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, 100%. My son loves him, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm a LeBron fan, so.
And you can relate to that, which is super cool,
Yeah.
and I think, like, from our perspective, anytime, that you can relate to to the younger generation, certainly kids, and, that's important, to parents, and, and especially if you're going to try to, get them into cards or something that you can collect with them so that they can enjoy it. My son, like, loves Marvel, DC, like that kind of stuff. So, I try to get him, boxes here and there that he can rip and keep, and like nothing that's like expensive or anything, but just something that he can kind of enjoy, just to see if it moves the needle for him, in terms of wanting to do it. And, so that stuff that you've seen, there's a handful of guys that have really gone out and moved the needle on, the Spider-Man cards and those PMGs and what have you. So, like, if that, and that's what we're talking about, like, with what's popular and hot at the moment, versus then, moving into something that really should be sustainable. So that's why I think, like, not only does Curry's resume speak for itself, but we believe that that, coupled with the inaugural set of NT, especially with Panini losing their basketball license, should have the same effect on his price points that it had with LeBron being an upper deck athlete.
Yeah.
When UD lost the license to Panini. So
yeah, and it's kind of remarkable that you look at arguably the two most important basketball players of our generation, and both of them were like the cornerstone of this super important set.
Right.
Like the timing is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like with LeBron, like, the hype was there. I mean, he was the guy. He was the next one, and whatever they call himself, the chosen one. I can't stand all of his own nicknames, but that being said, it was the inaugural set of Exquisite, and Exquisite was very important at the time because cardboard was a little bit dead. We had a rough time, after the junk wax sort of imploded on itself, and Upper Deck came out with this. I mean, at the time, it was a revolutionary idea. I mean, it was $500 a pack, at a time when, like, people were like, I don't even know if I want cards, and then they're like, you know what, we're going to do patch autos and this and that, as it related to, like, this entire set and make it super high end. And it just so happened to, they were like, all right, let's do it. I mean, what a draft class. You're going to have like 4 or 5 Hall of Famers, the big 4 in that set with Carmelo, Dwayne Wade, Bosh, and LeBron, all Hall of Famers, super cool. And 3 of the 4 played together, with the, when they went to the Heat for the 4-year run. So it's, fast forward, 6-7 years later, and, you're into this new generation of product and new generation of collectors. And, that's kind of where we see the NT set. And you should have multiple Hall of Famers, in this one as well.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to go back because you touched on how, like, you're seeing now, like, the Marvel and DC cards, get a lot more interest. I've also seen in the past, several months, the comic book industry, the vintage toys now also seeing a pretty big rise. Is that an area in which you guys ever look, or is that just kind of you guys stick to the sports sector of it?
I'll leave that one to you.
It's funny that you mentioned that, since comic books are my day job.
Yeah. This is what's funny.
I'm an agent for comic book artists, so I shop their samples to
Wow.
publishers, I negotiate their deadlines, sell their art to collectors, do all of that. So I play in both worlds for sure. And actually, when I came over to cards in 2017, I was coming back from collecting vintage comic books, and I basically funded my card collection by selling my Detective Comics 27 first appearance of Batman. So I've definitely seen what's been happening in comic books lately. I mean, they are definitely following the trend that I think cards was sort of the forerunner, and then everyone makes the logical conclusion. Well, if cards are doing this, why aren't comics doing this? And why aren't everyone's looking for that next opportunity? But I think it's just a more general approach of treating very high end collectibles as an alternative asset class, and it's an investment. And just the entire mind frame has changed. It's sort of like a paradigm shift, where cards or comics or toys or video games were collectible, but it was sort of like maybe a nerdy pursuit, or that sort of thing. But the respect level and the investment aspect and the money that has entered the space have totally changed all of that. I mean, the hobby's totally different now than it was when I rejoined it 5 years ago.
Yeah, I actually did not know that, just to be clear. So, because that seems like it was a layup right there. So that's pretty amazing. I didn't know that, but yeah, I mean, I really have been enjoying these fractional sites, Collectible, Rally, and you just see like more and more of them getting added, and you see like the daily price action between them, just so much activity on it, as opposed to like last year when I was on Rally, there was not nearly as many, and there was nowhere near as much like day-to-day interest in the toys or the comics. So it is definitely interesting to think about kind of how it crosses over and like integrates with each other. And that's how, like, you saw CSG crossover into doing the cards now, as well. And to your point, you can see that the alternative asset, just the whole wide area of alternative assets, has really taken like a tick up in interest. And it's cool. It's fun to see. And I think it creates a lot of that like diamond in the rough opportunity that you guys have been saying you look for. Like, hey, well, if this is this, and this is extremely rare, then it should kind of be raised up a bit. Do you guys ever see yourself kind of going in on a team purchase on like a set of comic books or something like that?
We've talked about it. I mean, there are certainly some blue chip comics that I think you can't go wrong by buying certain books, right? Like Amazing Fantasy 15 for Spider-Man, Batman #1, Superman #1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. Like those types of books are certainly blue chip, of the caliber of the types of cards we pursue. But one thing that I've always tried to keep in mind, when someone says, well, why don't you go after this, or why don't you go after that? One of my cardinal rules has always been sort of stay in your lane, like focus on what and it's actually the same reason that I don't really mess around with the stock market. I don't understand the stock market enough to want to play in it. Same thing with crypto. Like, I understand a lot of people are doing really well with crypto and NFTs, but it's not something that resonates with me on a personal level. I'd rather just stick with what I know and what I'm comfortable doing. And I think that's actually just kind of a very important thing to keep track of, that you don't outkick your coverage, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
as a former financial advisor, needless to say, I think what he said is important, because I think each person, no matter what space it is that you want to play in, like you don't need to chase. You need to understand who you are, understand what risks you can handle, and most people don't, because at least in this particular space, we've only seen rapid growth upward. I mean, we've had some cardboard recessions, maybe 2 or 3 of them in the last couple of years, which are important to have, to have resets. But, I think a lot of the people that, have been pretty successful just haven't seen, what it looks like on the other end of it, so like when you go through a bad recession. So, it's kind of like, hey, stay in your lane, minimize your risk, and, and do as well as you can. Just be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. A fun little question though. Do either one of you have maybe like just a player that is from your hometown, or a player that you like that you just personally collect? You don't collect it, maybe not even just cards, but something that you're into that you collect just to collect, not because of like, the investment value that it may bring.
I actually have a very large record collection. I'm really big into vinyl records, and I play them every single day. I work from home, so like that's my thing. Like probably have, I don't know, 700, 800 different records. The funny thing is though, I have a very hard time spending a significant amount of money on them. Like I can spend just an absolutely absurd amount of money on a sports card because it's an investment and I can totally buy into that approach to it. But if you're trying to sell me a record for $60 to $80 and I can get like a re-release for 20, I have a hard time justifying the purchase because I don't see a financial upside in doing it. And I understand it doesn't make that much sense, but I don't know. It's just something I struggle with.
I mean, I like to build sets from time to time, like with my kids. But so like that kind of stuff I do very behind the scenes, and like, I'm not posting, Instagram videos or anything like that. So there's the ripping wax element and just kind of slotting them into like, hey, what are we trying to build? So we probably have, I don't even know, maybe like 30 sets that are a third complete, a half complete, whatever. My wife hates it. Everywhere. But right now, something that's a little bit more mainstream, I think that people can relate to. I've started to collect Darius Garland. He's the point guard for the Cavaliers. I like him, and I'll do this for like wherever I live. Like I'm in Nashville now, and and we love it here. But like Garland played high school ball here, and then he stayed home. Like he was a big deal for Vanderbilt basketball to get him. Like he stayed for a year, and he was clearly going to be a one and done kid because he's really, really good. But so I took a lot of interest in just kind of like following his career while he was local. And then unfortunately, he wound up tearing his knee while he was at Vanderbilt. So he only played like 9 games. So we didn't really get to see him perform at his best while he was in college. And then he declared pro, and now he's on the Cavs. So financial aspect is, I mean, I haven't spent a ton of money. He's not like really wildly popular in the space, but he's also an upper deck athlete. So, like his cards are, I guess they would border on, some people would call it like unlicensed or what have you, but it's still kind of funny because I'm like, I always consider upper deck licensed, whether they have the NBA or not, just based, on their run of everything that they put out. So, but yeah, I mean, and I've bought a handful of the, Prism cards and things like that. So, anybody that's kind of like local and you're like rooting for the local kid, like Derrick Henry, I like him. Obviously on the Titans, he's really good. AJ Brown, like just, kind of like your local heroes. When I was into hockey, I had a lot of Pecorine because he was our best, he was our goalie. He's the best player to ever play for the Predators.
He lives down the street, right?
Does he? I did not know that. I just assumed he was full-time in like Finland. But anyway, so I had a bunch of his stuff, and they're retiring his jersey at the end of the month. And so anyway, just like guys like that, like just something that you can watch and kind of cheer with a little bit, without spending obscene amounts of money.
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 young daughters, 6 and 9. So we've been ripping some, there's like a women's soccer league set that we just rip for fun.
Right.
So they can see, a little bit of themselves in sports cards, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I mean, if you do that with your son, or if you don't, you should, like just for figure out like what he's into, basketball's expensive, so like it's always better if they're into like a, sort of like an off sport, because then you can kind of keep the cost down and buy them multiple boxes for, not that much money. Like my son really likes racing, so he's into like NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One. Like he loves to watch the races, and then into
Formula
like
One is super fun.
yeah, so he's all into that, which is cool. And then my daughter, she swims, so she's, I think like if they made like a Katie Ledecky card and I could find that, she'd be about pretty over the moon, I think. So, so that's kind of where I think what we fall in. Just to do it for for no investment whatsoever. In terms
Yeah.
of whether you make money or you lose it all.
Yeah. I'm gonna wrap up soon, but you brought something to my mind. My son loves playing 2K and Madden. Basketball is easy, right? Because the teams only have so many guys and you know who they are. But football, you have 53-man roster. You can see their eyes, their nose, and their mouth. So it's funny because like we'll look at cards sometimes, and football's like famous for, you look to you like, who the heck is this guy? Like, I don't even know who this guy is. But my son will be like, oh, you don't know who that is? He's got like an X Factor on Madden. He's like and he's like, he's able to know like who all these guys are. And it's funny too, like, because I have some older basketball cards, but in 2K, they allow you to play with like the all-time teams. So it's made up of like, so let's take like the Lakers. It would be like LeBron, Kobe, Magic, Kareem, James Worthy.
West, like
Right. So I'll see, we'll just look at like random cards sometimes, and it will be like dudes that like most people don't know unless you like know the NBA.
Yes.
And my son would be like, oh yeah, I know him, but I'm like, how do you know him? And he was like, oh, he's on the all-time team. So it's funny how these kids now with these video games, it really has exposed them to a lot of these athletes that they, to a point you made earlier about Pele, like my son's never seen the majority of these people ever play, like even on TV, because he's 12,
Right.
But it gains him interest, like when he does see these people, or he sees like a documentary now where the guy's older, and he'll be like, oh, that's that guy. And it like brings up this interest that, before like wasn't really there for like the younger crowd. So it's cool to see that as well. Like at practice, I'll like listen into all the kids, and you hear them talking about, they know so many of the athletes now and so many of the players and like what they're good at and whatnot, because they play these games, and the games now have so much like realistic stats that get updated like weekly into these players' profiles. So it's interesting. It's fun. It's fun to see.
I can leave that with, it's encouraging to hear, because I do think that like the vintage space across all the sports is extremely important, that it stays vibrant in the card community. So, while it's exciting to see, the one-off headliner of a big Honus Wagner sale or a big Pele sale or, something like that, but, it is good that these kids can connect, back to, Wilt, or Jerry West or something like that, Mickey Mantle or whoever, because everything paves the way for the next generation. And, sometimes, the term GOAT gets thrown around so loosely now that, it's important for them to, kind of understand exactly what it means, and like it kind of exactly how it gets, more or less defined, by what someone, a certain guy or certain woman meant to a certain sport, as opposed to like, like Court was saying earlier, like Burrow or Mahomes, all of a sudden, like, oh, they're the GOAT. Like, no, they're not. No, they're not. Just stop it.
I know. I have to talk to my son about that because we're huge Pats fans. So now, like, Mac Jones can do no wrong in my son's eyes. So it's like, well, I'm watching the game last night. He's like, oh, Mac would have made that throw. I'm like, dude, stop. I'm a Patriots fan, but no Pats talk tonight. All right? We're not talking about the Patriots tonight. But it's funny because they like hitch on to these players and they're like, no, he's the best. No one's better than him. So it's fun. It is fun. Thank you guys for your time. I
It was a pleasure,
appreciate
Greg. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, it was great. Court getting to meet you was great. And then just hear, how you guys met and kind of just where you guys are now. I mean, that set is truly amazing. And I'm sure you guys will be making some more splashes soon. So I look forward to seeing what you guys continue to do. And, maybe talking again down the line.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'd be happy to. If there's anything that if we do make a big splash, we were kind of hoping that we would have 2-for-1 today to give you some Pele news, but you got to take the L's with the W's too. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
yeah, it's a lot of
thank
fun.
you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you around on the next interviews. Thanks again, guys.